Welcome to Cultivate, a Veritas Academy podcast, where we explore truth, beauty, and goodness through meaningful conversation. We invite you to join us in discussions meant to edify your mind, encourage your heart, and equip your family to live abundantly in Christ.
Welcome to Cultivate, Veritas Academy's podcast. I'm your host, Ty Fischer, the head of school here at Veritas Academy, and really excited about our podcast today. We have two very recent graduates, newly minted graduates of Veritas Academy, Johnny Adkins and Lily Seiferlein. Hi, Johnny and Lily.
Hi, Mr. Fisher.
Hello.
Good to see you around this summer. We're recording it in the summer after Lily and Johnny graduated, and we had to do it before the end of the summer because they're both headed out of town to start college. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about how classical Christian education prepares young people for life. Now, Aristotle said that happiness was the goal of life. And so I think that, our main job here at Veritas is just to make students happy. Now, they're both smiling a little bit because sometimes our job, I really feel like, is to try to make happy 80-year-olds, to make them happy after they're done.
Not 18-year-olds.
No, I said 80-year-olds. But I want you to get to know these two just as folks that have passed through our school, coming from different circumstances, and to learn a little bit about them. So let's start with Lily, and just tell me a little bit about how long were you at Veritas? How did you come to Veritas? And then Johnny, you can take that one as well.
Wonderful. So I came to Veritas as a junior. First, I was homeschooled for the rest of my school career, and I came to Veritas not really knowing what to expect, but being very pleasantly surprised. Right away, I was introduced to my classmates. I still remember that first day of school really distinctly. Just everyone came over to me and introduced themselves. And I feel already that I've been there for all of high school or more. It was a wonderful experience, and I feel like I've learned so much in that short time that I was there. But
yeah,
it was so wonderful.
You transitioned in very, very late in your scholastic career, at least the K-12 scholastic career.
Yep.
So we'll come back to that and talk a little bit about that in a second. What about you, Johnny?
Yeah, I've been at Veritas my school career since kindergarten, and then I just graduated last May along with Lily. And yeah, so this has been the only school experience I've ever known or loved.
Wow. So let's just nail down for people, because I know they're probably asking this question in their mind. So what's the next step for each of you? What are you planning on doing next?
I'm headed off to Chicago this fall. I'm going to Concordia University, Chicago.
You know it's going to be very cold and windy over the winter.
Very cold and windy. But I grew up in Wisconsin, so maybe I'll be able to handle it.
Maybe you will.
Yeah.
Maybe you will.
But I'm currently undecided for my major. I guess we'll have to figure that out. But
do you have some leanings, some things you're interested in?
I'm in the honors program, so I definitely lean towards humanities. I'd definitely like to pursue something in that, although I'm not particularly sure which specific major, and also maybe occupational therapy. That's also something.
Now, I can't cheer on the podcast. They tell me not to do that,
right.
But I'm very thankful that you're thinking about the humanities.
Of course.
So, Johnny, what about you?
I'm going to Grove City College.
Hooray. Sorry, that's my alma mater.
No cheering.
I know.
Grove City College out in Grove City, Pennsylvania. Also cold, but...
Yes, Johnny, yes, it will be.
But I'm prepared for that. I prefer that kind of weather. I'll be studying biblical and religious studies and history, hopefully double majoring if I can.
Okay. So we're talking about being prepared for life, but I want to start with just about, a lot of times when we're talking about a classical education over and against maybe a vocational education, if we were Veritas School of HVAC, we'd have a great final exam. You'd have to put together an air conditioning unit, and we'd see if the room got cold. And there are technical schools that are out there. When we think about a classical education, it's really trying to form you as a human and form maybe those things that you love. You might have heard Mr. Dennis, I think he can't go a day without talking about rightly ordered loves, okay? So what were your favorite subjects, or what were the things that maybe formed you most here at Veritas Academy?
I think for me, coming from a place where I was homeschooled, I really enjoyed omnibus.
Now,
I know
we're going to have to define that because
Yeah.
not everybody is on the bus.
Right, that is true. Omnibus is a curriculum that Veritas teaches where we incorporate literature, rhetoric, theology, philosophy, all of the above.
Yeah, it
history.
kind of mix it all in.
Yeah, into a wonderful curriculum. It's taught in 2 classes a day, and we really get to delve into a lot of different topics, usually based off a book that we're reading. And I just really appreciated that class a lot because I was able to interact with my classmates and my teachers as well, and we were able to have conversations not just about the books that we were reading, but also about things in our lives, things in our school, things that we wanted to talk about. And
Almost as if those things that have happened in the past that people wrote down had something that we could learn from
right,
and
almost
apply
like
in
that.
life today.
Who would have guessed?
Yeah. Johnny, what about you?
Yeah, I think if it weren't for the omnibus classes I've taken here at Veritas, and even grammar school literature, not kind of relating to my recent high school career, but the books we read in grade school
Wow.
really had an impact on what I liked then and what I like now. I don't think I would have liked to listen and read dead people, but that's what we did a lot. We read both ancient, more older and more modern authors.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So you had a lot of dead friends, as it would be.
Yes.
Chesterton always talks about that democracy of the dead, right? If the dead people
Right.
could vote, some of the issues of today would not be voted on the same way. But so when you think about those things that really formed your loves, talk to me a little bit about how they helped you grow as a student and maybe more broadly as a person and then even as a Christian.
I think jumping off of like growing the loves, sometimes it feels like when you're a student here at Veritas that you're placing a faith in something that's kind of you can't really see at first. We're not a specialized education, but it's a classical education, and part of that is kind of feeling inefficient sometimes,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But that inefficiency translates to really learning to love things. And like Dorothy Sayers says, too much specialization is not a good thing.
No. And so, in some ways, we're trying to make you, instead of making you good HVAC technicians, which I'm for HVAC. Like if you all said, I want to now become an HVAC technician, I would go, hooray, because I'm terrible at that, right? So, but if we said all we're going to do kindergarten through 12th grade is make you an HVAC person, we'd be taking one subject and going very deep. Whereas a classical education tries to take you and pull you in the broad direction, right? Because we don't know what you're going to be. So,
And oftentimes I wouldn't ask, and my peers wouldn't ask, what's the point of this? Why are we learning this? Because it's just kind of the waters we tread.
yeah,
Oftentimes our parents ask that, and that's okay. I think there's, that's kind of the question that is brought up in these kinds of circles.
One time during my first year here at Veritas, which was when you guys were like -9 years old or something like that, I did have a parent leave a message on my answering machine, and they said, "Who is this Augstein fellow, and is he important?" Like, why is my kid beating their heads against the confessions? And I was like, oh, he's important. He's important.
Yeah.
Saint Augustine's pretty important. So, what about you, Lily? How would you answer the question?
Yeah.
Because your experience has to be pretty different than Johnny's.
I mean, I can't exactly relate to his answer about his favorite subject being grammar literature because I wasn't here. So, yeah, I would say at Veritas, I appreciated the fact that ultimately our loves are ordered around, the central faith. And so I appreciated the fact that, it didn't really matter what class we were in, but that there was a point to what we were learning. That, in anatomy and physiology, one of my favorite classes, sometimes we got to go off on tangents about a theology topic, and we would just mull over that instead of the human body for a few minutes or something like that.
Well, and one of my favorite days, one of my actually most terrifying days, is the day when we have the wound creation in anatomy and physiology.
It's a classic.
So it is. The kids learn, they use makeup and stuff, and they have to make something that looks like a wound and then tell what kind of wound it is, right? What was yours?
I think ours had to do with the veins on our arm, and it was gruesome, to say the least.
I know. So sometimes the first time Mrs. Crooks invited me into the room, I did not know that it was wound day.
Oh,
and
no.
I thought all the students, what happened in this room?
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out that they were all able to hold their arms up and tell me that this is a burn.
Right.
And this is like a gash, and this is a incision.
Now, the poor kindergartners that don't really know the difference.
Oh, no.
You know, like the high school students are out in the hallways still with the makeup on. There's a lot of comments.
We haven't ever terrified a kindergartner to death, but it is a day where it's a very practical learning. So you really enjoyed. So that's interesting though, that you enjoyed science, but you're thinking about going into the humanities. That's some of that breadth that we were talking about.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess I kind of gave it away there by saying one of the things I enjoyed about anatomy was when we talked about theology. But at the same time, I think that, we can bring the humanities into every aspect of what we teach because we actually can understand them and why we're learning about them.
So sometimes I'll run into parents or students who say, boy, I just don't know if I can make this transition. And honestly, I mean, there is, we try to work hard here at Veritas, so it's a meaningful education, but you were able to make that transition over. How did you navigate that so well?
Well, I mean, I can't exactly take all the credit. I think the majority of that goes to my teachers and classmates because, I mean, it is a difficult transition, especially since I came during COVID. That was a little bit strange as well.
I thought we were going to make it through at least one podcast without the mention of COVID, but I'm having bad memories already.
Yeah, same. But, I just remember if I was ever struggling, learning how to just do simple things that my classmates did know how to do. I mean, because I was homeschooled, I didn't even know how to raise my hand.
Now, come on now.
But I don't know. I feel like my classmates and teachers were always rooting for me and helping me with things that I ever had questions on.
Okay. Now, Johnny, your experience, of course, very different. Mrs. Lake taught you to raise your hand the first day, probably.
Yes, she did.
And what do you think the benefit of being a student in the same school? Because there are certainly both benefits and there's probably benefits for people that, I know military kids that change schools.
Mm-hmm.
Like there might be some benefit in that. What's the benefit of being at the same school over 13 years and being with not the same classmates because, there's people like Lily that pop in and sometimes there are people that pop out. So, but what was special about that for you?
I think there's quite a few benefits and one of them being the culture that is created and fostered by teachers over the years kind of hardens and crystallizes over time. And so, like, we jump into kindergarten with new kids that we don't know. It's like 20 or so, and it's exciting. We don't, we make friends, but you stick with those same people. No, sure, you mentioned people leave and new people come in, but it's the same culture.
Yeah.
And that sticks with you for 13
Well, and
years.
I remember at the, I had the privilege of teaching your class a little bit this year. And as I interacted with people, a lot of them have been here for, if not the whole time, at least a like Lily, you're the special one, right? You came in at the end. A lot of them are, it came to Veritas from kindergarten or in first grade or such.
Mm-hmm. And part of that comes the repetition of things that is universal throughout all of the lower grades, the middle grades, and the higher grades. And one of those things that came to my mind when I was thinking about this was prayer before classes. So all the way down from kindergarten, praying as a classroom before we would do certain subjects or before recess or before lunch, all the way up through classes in high school where our teachers would come before the Lord with their students. And I think there's just something so wonderful about that that fosters and builds on itself.
That's a very interesting thing, Johnny. I think, I sometimes, when you talk to a fish about what water feels like, the fish is like, I don't know. I've never felt anything different. But, and being the head of school here for, like I said, 27 years now, I guess, that just seems so normal. It would seem abnormal not to do it that way. But I know what you're saying is true, that it's not always the normal thing. So a lot of times we talk about being prepared for life. People often talk about being prepared for college or career. And of course, I don't want you to be unemployable, and I don't want you to not be able to go to college if that's what God's calling you to. But a classical Christian school should be after a lot more than that. We should be after you being prepared for life in a more holistic way. And we talked about forming those ordered loves, loving the right things the most, like God, and then loving cotton candy less, or not at all. Cotton candy is one of those things you can give or take. So what are the things that you have come to love because of your teachers and your education here at Veritas?
I mean, I'm going back to discussions here again, but I think one of the things, for me at least, was that we understand that there's a point and a reason to understand these things, and that ultimately God wants us to understand these questions that we have. And so if I ever have something that I didn't understand in school, that I could go up to a teacher afterwards and ask him or her and really battle with that, or talk to my classmates in the hallways and really get to the root of what I was thinking about. Because ultimately, God wants us to answer these questions that we have. One of the things is, as a Lutheran, and I'm jokingly referred to as Lutheran Lily, but I found it so wonderful how excited my teachers and classmates are to have conversations with that about me. So if we're reading a book and, it's taught from one perspective, that I can go up to my teacher after class and say, hey, what does Luther teach about this? What is my church's position on this topic? And they're fully willing to talk to me.
Are you sure that they gave you the truth?
I'm pretty sure.
Well, you could check it out with your dad.
And then I went home and said, hey, Dad. Yeah. But I think that was particularly a joy for me, just constantly being able to have conversations with even Johnny, on the floor during lunch, and, talking to him about what his church looked like on Sunday compared to mine.
Now, I know your family's a little bit. Is that something that happens around your dinner table a lot?
Of course, yeah, yeah. Another, part of my day was getting home and, setting the dinner table, and then everyone goes around, what'd you do today, Lily? What'd you learn in school? And, I'd get to talk about what we were learning in Omnibus that day, or the dissection that we did in anatomy. And we just discuss those as a family. And also sometimes it was fun to hear my dad's perspective on things, and maybe it'd even make it into the sermon on Sunday.
Aha!
Yeah.
Oh no, that sometimes that can be treacherous, right?
Usually it was fine. But.
Or oftentimes, Lily, convey this message for your dad, and Dad, let me give this message to Johnny for you.
Okay. So there was a little bit of back and forth there.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So what about you, Johnny?
Yeah, when I think about again, ordered loves, I just think about how the teachers here make things so contagious, make the love of
not
the
COVID,
fields.
not
No,
COVID,
not COVID, but the love of really school and really learning very contagious. And I think about some of the grammar school teachers I had, Miss Walker, with grammar, with making a very imaginative land of grammaria for third graders to really love exploring the depths of language in a fun and
because all third graders
fantastical way.
All third graders love grammar naturally, right?
Of course, that's. But there needs to be that contagious love, or middle schoolers don't exactly love writing, but I think when I had Mrs. Plouts as a teacher, she would make it kind of like a puzzle, and it was something I think that especially my class really engaged in because of how she presented it and her love for the subject matter.
Okay. So what are maybe some of your favorite books? You talked about reading all those old dead people. So who are some of your old dead friends, or what are books that you have especially come to love here at Veritas?
Yeah, it's hard to choose.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite books that we read at Veritas was one we read last year, Umberto Eco, Name of the Rose.
That is a wonderful book.
Mhm.
Don't, by the way, everybody, there is a movie of The Name of the Rose. It's not a bad movie. I think Sean Connery's in it, but don't watch the movie before you read the book because the book is so much better. Yeah.
There's so much depth in the book that it really felt like a culmination of all that we were learning here, because it's set in medieval times.
Don't be a spoiler here.
I will not.
Okay.
But there's a lot of,
because it's a mystery.
yes, it's a kind of a medieval monk mystery, but there's history, philosophy, theology, science, kind of a philosophy of science in there that's really fascinating.
Yeah. Lily, what about you?
I think I'd also agree with Johnny. That one was wonderful, and I still think about it sometimes. But I'd say my favorite was probably C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy that we read this year. Like Johnny was kind of also talking about, it was exciting to be in the classroom learning about that, because I think our teacher was really excited to have those conversations based off the book, which made it even more fun. And it took us a while to get through those three, but at the same time, every moment was wonderful. And there was so much theology and richness to what Lewis was writing that every moment we read that, there was so much to talk about.
Do you ever have the experience of like listening to or reading a story in the news and thinking, "Oh my goodness, that hideous strength is happening right now"?
Absolutely, yeah.
Isn't it? That Lewis
It's
was
a little eerie.
It is a little eerie, but if the bad people of not the NICE, the National Institute of Coordinated Experiments, if those people were coming, it'd be good to have that eerie feeling and not just, to walk into the zombie apocalypse unawares. So both of you talked a little bit about discussion here at Veritas, and that's a tool that we use. And you talked about the broad range of things that you've studied. How do you feel like that has prepared you for maybe the next step in life, and then maybe for many steps in life into the future?
I would say at Veritas, primarily we start with our faith and we build forth from that. And I would say that I really gained a better understanding of what exactly I believe. And I think that from anywhere at the school, from science classes to theology classes, I was better able to understand what exactly I believe and why I'm there on Sunday.
So knowing where you stand helps you to be ready for the next challenge you're going to face.
Because ultimately, I think that when we all go off to college, we're going to be faced with a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different questions. And ultimately, having that confidence, I think that I'll be able to handle a lot of those conversations I'll be having with people who are very different from me and definitely, don't even have the same faith that I do.
Yeah.
And also having the tools, not only of knowledge of what we believe, as Lily mentioned, but the tools of rhetoric and logic are so, and also kindness, which is something I hope Veritas continues to foster while we're gone. I feel like it's something it's fostered in me, is those tools of kindness and listening help us interacting with people with different perspectives so that we really ultimately glorify God in what we do. It's not something for ourselves necessarily, although we are benefited by it.
Right.
Yeah. So what have you been learning this summer?
I just got back from a conference, a church conference, which was really wonderful. And I got to learn about the book of Song of Solomon, also Psalms and Proverbs, which was really interesting.
It's kind of a wisdom literature thing.
Well, this person who was talking, he was just explaining, we have the most wonderful book because it was written by the wisest man in the world, and that we should take advantage of that. So that's something that I've been learning this summer.
Okay. Johnny?
I've been kind of preparing for my studies in the fall, kind of looking at books that...
Johnny getting ahead? That's hard to believe.
Not a surprise.
But one of the books I read that is actually in the omnibus curriculum, but we didn't, for time reasons, we didn't get to, is J. Gresham Machen's Christianity and Liberalism.
Okay.
I studied that this summer. It was really good read.
Yeah.
Also kind of eerie.
No, the same kinds of things are happening right now. You can see the same kind of compromises being made.
Yeah, and then another that was recommended was Christ and Culture, Richard Niebuhr.
Okay.
It's really, really good dissection of that subject.
A dissection. There you go. You, as Lewis said, dissect to know, but he was arguing that you shouldn't. So what would really surprise families who are thinking about Veritas, who are considering sending their kids to Veritas, give them a classical Christian education? What would surprise them about Veritas Academy?
I think for me, something that came as a surprise to me was that classical Christian education is for everyone. It's not just for someone who's been, K through 12th grade, someone who's taken Latin their whole life and knows classical literature like the back of their hand, that, it's for everyone as long as you're ready to learn and you're going to do your homework. Yeah. But coming to Veritas, I think, taught me that I can still appreciate the classics and I can have conversations and study hard things. And it doesn't matter that, I wasn't a Latin student or something like that, but that was for me too. And I really appreciated that.
Okay, Johnny?
Yeah. One thing I would advise parents is Veritas is not in the business of being new and innovative. It's in the business of old things, and that's loving and receiving a heritage that we have. And that's it's not about innovation, it's about that old heritage.
Yeah, I don't know if families have followed this, but usually in the paper they actually have what's new at like every school district this year. And usually, it's like some kind of funky technology that they're going to use. And that I'm just imagining, these older teachers trying to use this weird technology, or they're going to run some classes off of smartphones, which I think, good grief, that's the worst idea I've ever heard of. And here at Veritas, I always want to write in and just say, like, we're actually going to have like whiteboards and then some blackboards, chalk and some markers and a bunch of good books and some really smart teachers. And that's how we're going to go forward. So thank you for pointing that out.
And we're not in a school barn.
No. But in fact,
we do have classrooms.
Hopefully, as you're walking down the hallways, you might be a little jealous because it's going to be an even nicer building next year.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. So Johnny and Lily, thank you for coming in today. Thank you for sacrificing this little sliver of your summer to share some time with us. And
thank you for having us.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Blessed to have you. And thank you for being such good representatives of our school.
You've been listening to Cultivate, the podcast of Veritas Academy, a preschool through 12th grade classical Christian school in Leola, Pennsylvania. If you would like to learn more about Veritas, please visit veritasacademy.com to discover the truth, beauty, and goodness of classical Christian education.